Welcome back. Now, despite the Supreme Court's ruling on full autonomy, local governments and many councils still face political control, mismanaged funds, and stalled development. And with that, we'll be looking at the issues of local government autonomy in Nigeria with Barrister Pat Onukuli. He's a real estate mogul and a legal practitioner. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, the 1999 Constitution recognizes local governments as, of course, the third tier of government, and yet most of these local governments are under state control. So looking at it from a legal standpoint, where exactly does the Constitution draw the line between state oversight and local government autonomy?
Yeah, thank you for having me. You know, Nigeria is supposed to be a federation, and by that means you know, some sort of state autonomy, you know, where the center is not too powerful. So the idea of the Constitution, you know, recognizing the local government as third tier of government, some sort of, I would call, a developmental you know, philosophy, in the sense of maybe trying to bring in some sort of accountability, you know, at the end of the day. But at the root of it is this. The 1999 Constitution, you know, recognizes the local government as third tier of government, but it does not go further to grant them that financial autonomy. The Section 7 of the 1999 Constitution recognizes the local governments as, you know, maybe the third tier of government, and recognizes them, you know, as, you know, recognizes, you know, some sort of elections to look at, but it does not go further to grant that financial autonomy. And some, you know, proponents of that financial autonomy might say, okay, well, the states always mismanage, but there's the danger there in a federation. So I think the 1999 Constitution was very clear, but the ruling, last year's ruling, went further. The Supreme Court's ruling last year went further, you know, by granting that financial autonomy. So I think it does not augur well, if you ask me. That's my view. For the, you know, in a true federation, it does not augur well for Nigeria. That's my view.
All right. Since there have been a ruling in 2024 by the Supreme Court, now, why has the implementation of this ruling been so slow so far?
Yeah, there's still some sort of, you know, some sort of the states are agitating. You know, there's some sort of opposition to that ruling. That ruling, yes, is in place, but it's not very popular. It's there. The Supreme Court, you know, coming from an idealistic point of view. And for me, you know, it does not respect, you know, the fundamental principles of federalism, true federalism. You know, and that's my point. You know, Section 162 of the Constitution makes for, you know, what they call joint state and local government accounts, which means the accounts come through the states and is shared, you know. But along the line, I will maybe offer my own views as to why it's not in the interest of democracy and in the interest of, you know, a multicultural system like Nigeria to have a system where the center, you know, comes to control or to dictate how the local governments are, you know, funded.
Now, state governors have often been accused of crippling local governance, you know, by appointing things like caretaker committees and withholding funds. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's very bad, even because Section 7 of the Constitution recognizes, you know, although they are not justiciable, but insists that there should be, you know, there should be democratically elected governor, local governments, and we should run their tenure. But somehow, most states, go through the back door to, undermine, because that Section 7 is actually not justiciable, to now control and sometimes, most times, appoint caretaker committees, which is wrong for me. At the end of the day, yes.
All right, now, we know that the local government, have been clamoring about this autonomy, and we can see the case in Osun State. Yes. But nobody is actually talking about how accountable and transparent they can be when they are given this autonomy. Yes,
at the end of the day, it's the local governments in Nigeria are not quite developed to really, take on these issues of don't get me wrong. There's always been issues of transparency. There's always been issues of, the NOLGE, there's this National Union of Local Government Employees. They've been pushing to have some sort of autonomy. But there's a foundational philosophy, that's overreaching philosophy, which guides, a true federalism. The local governments are really not a federating unit. But what I mean by a federating unit is this. Federating unit is where people come together, different nationalities, agree to become one, to be under one nation. Nigeria is a diverse ethnic, country. So people come together to come in as one. And they only federate, so you must sort of grant some sort of autonomy to different nationalities. Where the center is too powerful as to, getting involved in local administration does not augur well, for this democracy and for federation. And because what you have at the end of the day, you are having a unitary system that promotes some sort of tyranny. You could have somebody at the center, he detects what happens at the backyard. So at the end of the day, it's, there are some people clamoring for accountability that the states are not doing very well. But if you really look at it, the foundational, philosophy or foundational reason over, outstrips any other consideration. Because when you have somebody at the center controlling what happens in your village, in everything, it doesn't all go well. It breeds discontent. It breeds some sort of, anger. So despite the fact that the local governments are not, well managed, or maybe there's some sort of, financial impropriety and all those, but it does not, at the end of the day, justify the system where funds or whatever control of the local government should come straight from the center.
Exactly. Now, earlier on, you've mentioned that it is not in the interest of a democracy for the center to handle all of these things, particularly where the center is too powerful. And you mentioned reasons, giving reasons why. So can you tell us why it will not augur well, or it does not augur well in a federation? Yes,
really, not necessarily democracy, because it depends. If it's democracy, maybe it's a unitary, when in a unitary system where you don't have diverse cultures, or so, that's okay. But Nigeria is considered of diverse people. And to give people a sense of belonging, you need to, most of the ethnic nationalities of Nigeria have come together, agree to be under one federal government. So a system where you allow control from the center would, breed some sort of tyranny, bring some sort of, where, the different nationalities, some especially the minorities, will feel disenchanted. Fathers of federalism like Montesquieu, the French philosopher, said that federalism is there to cure the ills of tyranny And again, in America, the father of, well, I would say the father of the American Constitution, James Madison, said, and I quote, that you don't allow the center to become too powerful. The states are the federating units. People come together, just like maybe you go to a meeting, you come with your family to a central meeting, you decide on what happens. At the end of the day, you get your allocation. Then you go back to your family to decide how you use those monies. But what's happening in Nigeria is, at the meeting, somebody at the center wants to decide what you do with your family, the amount of money you give to your son or to your daughter. And I think that is infantilizing the states. And it breeds, discontent. And that's what's happening in Nigeria now.
All right. Now, how do you respond to critics who actually say that some state governors are deliberately resisting implementation, to actually retain political and financial control?
Yes, that's the other downside of it. I'm not necessarily saying the state governors are doing very well. That's the other downside. For me, my own opinion is this: that's a lesser evil. At the end of the day, democracy has been growing, but it's not. I don't think our democracy is developing very well. The state governors have come to be, emperors. Most of them are, they move unchecked. The whole idea is that the state houses of assembly should be able to put the governors in check, but they're not doing so. And what we have today in Nigeria, like what's going on, most governors in Nigeria are trying to join the ruling party because the center is too powerful. Nobody is controlling. The judiciary has been captured. Most people have been captured. So somebody at the center will decide what happens. So at the end of the day, I must say, it doesn't augur well, for our democracy as it's presently constituted. We should stop. We should not run the risk, in the premise of idealism to, throw away the baby with the bathwater. We should be very conscious of the fact that we have different regions in this country. We have different, before the 1976, Local Government Act or the Local Government Law, the regions had the ways of managing, their local affairs. The North had their, their native laws, whatever, managed by traditional rulers. The West had their semi-autonomous, system. The East had their divisional system. But somehow, after the vestiges of the Nigerian Civil War, all these things were brought into unity. And all along, you have somebody at center. The center is so wasteful, dictating, things across board, not just only the local government, across board. And that's, should really be resisted. That should really be resisted.
But do you think bringing all of them into unity, like you said, is some sort of a mistake? And do you think we can go back to that system?
Well, thank you for that. The point is that unitary system, I think, was deliberate. It was deliberate. It started from, when the Civil War came up. They thought some regions were very powerful, and that led to the state's creation, diluting the regional system from the 4 regional system to the 12, states we had in 1967. And after the Civil War, it continued. And maybe some thought maybe the Gowon administration was a bit slow. And after Gowon was overthrown, the Obasanjo-Moritala administration came in, maybe with an agenda to now bring the entire country under control. And the local government was one of the, the acts that was brought into control, as well as some other, laws like the land use decree and so many others. Land use decree where you have the federal government or state, dictated from the center. It doesn't, practice this for the past 50 years. It's not worked well. It's not worked well. There should be regional coloration like it's done in America. Yes, we're under one. There should be devolution of power from the center. What we have in Nigeria is the center is just too powerful. It breeds a lot of discontent. And that's been my argument.
Right. Now, seeing how things are, do you think that Nigeria can achieve a local government autonomy without destabilizing the federal structure?
Yeah, for me, I don't know. That's my view. I don't think this idea of local government autonomy should be priority. The local governments are not well structured. They are not strong enough to actually be very relevant. That's my view. And I've written about this on so many occasions. I've presented papers on this. That's my view. But unfortunately, the Supreme Court of Nigeria, in their wisdom, they think, maybe from pressures from Nolge and some other stakeholders, maybe they felt that this financial autonomy is the way forward for developmental reasons. But I think at the end of the day, like I repeat it's I think it's a lesser evil, for me to keep the local governments under states, to keep them under states, because most of the states are, with 36 states in the country now, most of the states are a little smaller. Then you go down to the local government, there's a danger of what you could call a backward regression, where, along the line, the wards within the local governments will some sort of start seeking their own financial autonomy and things like that. It doesn't all go well. We should, in Nigeria, allow the states to be federating units. If you get your monies from the center, you decide what to do with them at the state level. That's been my view.
But looking at how things are now, do you see in Nigeria, do you see things moving in that direction, this thing you're proposing, decentralization?
Well, it may not happen in the immediate future, because the Supreme Court just had its ruling last year in a suit by the Attorney General of Federation. It's been won. But my sister, with myself, we know the decisions that's been coming out from the Supreme Court. Many of them are not well considered. Supreme Court, yes, though final, is not infallible. The final, but not infallible. They are not, whatever they say does not make it correct. It does not work well. The local governments are not well structured. I'm not in any way saying that, I'm not in any way, professing or propagating that the local government should, it should be free for all, and they shouldn't, they should spend the money the way they are. But what I'm saying is this, although popular with some people, this financial autonomy does not augur well. That's my fundamental argument with true federalism.
All right. Now, do you think there are other states that, have this autonomy? And is there any difference from other states? And from your standpoint, which states appear to be leading in the implementation of the autonomy?
Well, I can't really state by state example or whatever, and that's the point that I've been trying to make. The Supreme Court has overreaching, jurisdiction across board, and their ruling now, what it means is, every state should fall in line. I know during the Obasanjo administration, the Lagos state government, then under the president of the country, was insisting on creating some developmental areas, which was resisted. Is the federal, the local governments have a schedule, the number of local governments in the country. And it's inappropriate, if you ask me, because most of those things were creations of the military. It was autocratically created. Some regions were, disproportionately awarded so many local governments, and they share from the center. It's just not right. They share from the center. Some states, at the end of the day, there were so many criteria that were used, in the creation of local government. Some landmass. We know from everything that some areas, especially in the Sahel and the Savannah areas of the country, we have sparse population. Some regions are unduly, giving more local governments created, and everything is accepted. So for me, this local government system is an aberration. So coming to answer your question, my dear, I won't say maybe the West, the states of Oyo and Ogun and some, they've been doing better, they've been doing better, but where you have a ruling that funding should go straight to the local governments, yes, some see it as victory, but the point I'm making, I don't want to, overemphasize this, is this: when they get these monies as a local government, they don't have all the structure to put in place. So the argument I'm making is it should still remain under, as provided by Section 162. Section 162 of the Constitution that provides for joint local government and states account, joint account. So you get your monies, you take them and decide what to do with them, at the end of the day. So in a true federalism, that's what it should really be.
Now, speaking of this joint account, there's been a controversy saying that the state joint local government account is some form of an Achilles heel for the autonomy. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it should be abolished? Do you think, what's your
Yes, unfortunately, like the point I'm making, it's a lesser evil. It's a lesser evil. Yes, most state governors, appropriate most of this funding. It doesn't really get to the, joint account. The local governments are there. Section 7 of the Constitution provides for democratically elected governors that should, democratically elected local governments, and they should really receive their monies. But you find out today, what you found, what's been going on is most state governors are just too powerful. They are not put in check by the state houses of assembly. The state houses of assembly, actually, it is their role, one of their key roles, to ensure that this money on the state's joint account gets to the individual local government. But it's not happening. You find out most of the members are just, political boys or political girls or political ladies or political men. They're all there's no dissent. And in Nigeria today, any dissent is seen as, a crime or something like that. And it goes on. So for true democracy, like we see today, on a bigger scale, most opposition governors are trying to join the ruling party, because when people go like the Supreme Court, you don't get justice. Everybody's running to protect themselves. So it's a system where democracy doesn't function properly. So the point I'm making is this. Section 162 makes for joint states and local government accounts. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is the implementation and the supervision of that, that joint is not being done properly by the state houses. The state houses of assembly should ensure that monies that are meant for the local government should really get to them. But it's not being done. So what I'm saying, the bigger picture, you don't, because the state houses of assembly, they are not working properly, then therefore you now decide that the solution to that is to bypass the states and send the monies directly to the local government. I don't know if I just made some point.
Yes, yes. Now, finally, before we go, we are aware of what is happening in Osun State, withdrawal of finance and all that, the saga between the local government chairman on sitting and all of that. Now, what are your thoughts on what is going on there?
So that's the problem. That's the same thing I'm talking about. You know, some local governments are now, you know, taking it, you know, on themselves to, you know, especially with aid of their local government unions to see. But somehow there is still a gray area in the sense that this ruling has been there by the courts, and the states are adjusting. Some states are trying to pass some laws, like I know in Anambra State, you know, a law's been passed, you know, to sort of, you know, circumvent the ruling of the Supreme Court that will now also ensure some sort of state oversight to that ruling. It's not really very popular. It's something happening in Oyo State, or, you know, like you mentioned. So we see how it plays out at the end of the day. You know, at the end of the day, we'll see how it plays out. But for me, you know, as a legal practitioner and a legal mind, a legal scholar, I look beyond, you know, developmental issues. I look more into foundational, you know, epistemology. That's a big language, philosophy. What I'm trying to say is, I look more into what should bring us together as a nation. You know, my sister, you don't want anybody to come to your house. My sister, you don't want anybody to come into your house and tell you how to run your family. You know, to come in, yes, somebody from outside, come into your house and tell you, man, you have to use these monies for that, you have to use these monies for that. Our democracy has not been functioning well. You know that we've been talking, or we've been saying so many things. And the people at the National Assembly, most of them are more interested in self-preservation. The governors are more interested in self-preservation. They want to join the ruling party. There's no longer opposition. And we'll continue falling over ourselves, you know, at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Pat Onukuli. Thank you for joining us in the studio.
Thank you for joining us this
Thank
morning.
you for having me.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Can I say one thing? I wish Signature TV, you know, better coverage. And so thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you so much, Barrister Pat Onukuli, for looking into issues around local government autonomy. He is a legal practitioner, and that is where we come to the end of that conversation this morning. Stay with us when we return. Signature Morning continues.